Most people walk past pennies every day without thinking twice. They sit in jars, glove compartments, old dresser drawers, and forgotten coffee cans. But sometimes, a single penny, one that looks completely ordinary, ends up creating a moment of quiet shock when someone finally looks closely. And today's coin, the 1964 Lincoln penny with the D mint mark, has done exactly that for some owners. While most are common, a small number of verified examples have sold for unusually high prices under very specific conditions. And understanding why could completely change how you see the pennies you already own. This is where many people get confused, because 1964 doesn't sound rare at all. In fact, more Lincoln pennies were minted in 1964 than in almost any other year in U.S. history. But high mintage doesn't always mean zero value. And the Denver Mint, marked with a small d below the date, produced hundreds of millions of these coins during a time when America was experiencing major cultural, economic, and monetary shifts. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for more than 50 years, and copper prices were climbing, setting the stage for changes that would soon reshape U.S. coinage forever. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: the metal itself. The 1964 Lincoln penny is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. That gives it a solid weight of about 3.11 grams and a deeper reddish tone compared to modern zinc cents. To collectors, this composition alone gives the coin lasting interest, especially as copper values fluctuate and older solid copper cents become harder to find in pristine condition. But this difference can completely change interest condition. Most 1964 pennies were heavily circulated. They were used in everyday commerce, dropped into vending machines, passed across lunch counters, and spent at grocery stores thousands of times. As a result, most examples today show wear, dull surfaces, and contact marks. In those grades, they're usually worth only face value or slightly more. But when you move into high-grade uncirculated condition, especially coins that were carefully preserved from the beginning, the story changes dramatically. This is where many people get confused, because two coins with the same date and mint mark can have completely different market outcomes. A brown-toned circulated penny might sell for a few cents, but a sharply struck, blazing red uncirculated example certified by a professional grading service can sell for tens, hundreds, or in select cases, far more. Some verified high-grade examples have achieved life-changing sale results for select examples, not because they're rare in existence, but because they're rare in perfect preservation. And here's a detail collectors quietly watch strike quality. The Denver Mint in 1964 was producing coins at massive speed. That sometimes resulted in weak strikes, especially in Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat details, and in the wheat ears on the reverse. Coins with unusually sharp strikes, full detail, and strong luster stand out immediately to experienced buyers. That difference can completely change interest, especially when combined with clean surfaces and original color. Now let's talk about varieties, because this is where quiet wealth discovery sometimes begins. While 1964 pennies don't have famous major errors like doubled dies that dominate headlines, collectors still watch closely for minor die varieties, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, and unusual planchet errors. Most of these aren't obvious to the naked eye, but when authenticated, some have commanded surprising premiums. This is where many people get confused. They assume if a coin isn't famous online, it can't matter. But in reality, specialized collectors often pay strong prices for subtle, legitimate anomalies. And this difference can completely change interest, color designation. Certified pennies are labeled as brown, red-brown, or red. Red examples retain at least 95% of their original mint luster and color, and they're far scarcer than brown ones, especially after 6 decades of exposure to air and moisture. A red 1960 penny in top condition can be worth exponentially more than a brown one, with the same technical grade. This is one of the quietest but most powerful value drivers in modern coin collecting. Now let's look at realistic value ranges, because credibility matters. Circulated 1960-40 pennies typically sell for face value to a few cents. Lightly circulated or attractive copper examples might bring slightly more in bulk or collector lots. Uncirculated coins in lower mint-state grades often sell for a few dollars, but certified high-grade red examples can move into the tens, hundreds, or even higher, depending on eye appeal and demand. And a very small number of top population coins, the finest known, have achieved exceptional prices at auction, reflecting not hype, but competition among serious collectors. This is where many people get confused. They see a headline about a huge price and assume all examples are worth that much. But in reality, it's condition, rarity within grade, and demand that drive results. Most people never own a top-tier specimen, but some do, and they don't realize it until years later. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: surfaces. Hairline scratches, fingerprints, cleaning marks, and unnatural shine can severely reduce value. Even a coin that looks bright to the naked eye can lose most of its premium if it's been cleaned or polished. This difference can completely change interest, especially for certified buyers who rely on originality and surface quality above almost everything else. And that brings us to one of the most common mistakes owners make: cleaning their coins. Many people believe washing or polishing a penny will make it more valuable. In reality, it usually does the opposite. Cleaning removes original surfaces and leaves microscopic damage that permanently lowers collector interest. Another mistake is improper storage. Tossing coins into humid containers, plastic bags, or rubber holders that cause discoloration or corrosion over time. This is where many people get confused, because they assume age equals value. But with modern-era coins like the 1960-40 penny, preservation is often more important than age. A flawless example saved in a drawer in 1964 can outperform hundreds of worn examples pulled from circulation decades later. Now here's something that surprises many collectors: patience matters. Some of the strongest sale results for select examples didn't happen immediately. They happened when owners waited for the right market conditions, the right buyer competition, and the right certification timing. Quiet wealth discovery in coin collecting rarely comes from rushing. It comes from understanding what you have, protecting it properly, and letting knowledge work over time. And here's a detail collectors quietly watch: population reports. These track how many coins exist in each grade. When only a handful of 1960-40 pennies exist at the very highest certified levels, even a common date coin can suddenly become scarce. This difference can completely change interest, especially among registry set collectors who compete to own the finest known examples. So what should you actually do if you own a 1960-40 Lincoln penny? First, check the mint mark. The small d below the date confirms Denver mint production. Then look at color. Is it brown, red-brown, or bright red? Next, examine surfaces. Are there scratches, spots, or dull patches? Look at detail sharpness in Lincoln's hair and beard, and the wheat ears on the reverse. And most importantly, resist the urge to clean or polish anything. This is where many people get confused, because they assume grading is only for rare coins. But sometimes, the only way to unlock hidden financial potential is through professional authentication and grading, especially if a coin appears unusually sharp, red, and well-preserved. Now let's talk about expectations, because credibility matters. Most 1960-40 pennies are common, but a small number exist in exceptional condition, and those are the ones that drive extraordinary auction results. Not because of hype, not because of internet rumors, but because collectors compete for the best preserved survivors of America's coinage history. And here's the deeper reason this coin still matters. It represents the final years of solid copper Lincoln cents before major composition changes reshaped U.S. money forever. It's a snapshot of a different era, when everyday coins were heavier, richer in metal content, and designed to last decades in circulation. That historical context gives even common examples lasting collector appeal. This is where many people get confused. They assume modern collectors only care about ancient coins or gold. But the Lincoln Cent series remains one of the most widely collected in the world. Millions of Americans build sets, search through rolls, and hunt for upgrades. And that ongoing demand keeps even mid-20th century dates like 1960-40 firmly on the radar. And this difference can completely change interest, because sometimes value isn't discovered at the bank counter. It's discovered quietly at home, when someone takes the time to examine an old jar, inherited collection, or forgotten box of coins with fresh eyes. So here's the takeaway. The 1960-40 Lincoln penny is not automatically rare. It's not automatically valuable. But under the right conditions, exceptional preservation, strong color, sharp strike, and professional certification, select examples have produced remarkable results. Not guaranteed, not common, but real. And that's why this coin deserves a second look. If you have old pennies at home, especially from the 1950s and 1960s, take a closer look tonight. Pay attention to mint marks, color, and condition. Store anything promising carefully. And remember, knowledge and patience matter more than speed. If you want to continue learning about Lincoln pennies that have surprised collectors with quiet wealth discovery and hidden financial potential, watch the next video in this series. Because sometimes, the smallest coins carry the biggest stories, and the next one might already be sitting in your pocket. Imagine this: a penny that most people have spent without a second thought, a coin that still turns up in change jars, desk drawers, and old coffee cans. Yet certain verified examples of this exact penny have sold for prices that stunned even experienced collectors. Not everyone, not even most, but a small number of special 1968 Lincoln cents with a D mint mark have quietly crossed into high-value territory. And today, we're going to explore why this ordinary-looking coin still commands extraordinary attention, and how to tell if yours deserves a closer look. Because this is where many people get confused. Value isn't about age alone. It's about the right combination of date, mint, condition, and sometimes rare minting errors that were never meant to leave the mint at all. The 1968 Lincoln cent with a D mint mark was produced at the Denver Mint during one of the busiest periods in modern U.S. coinage history. The late 1960s saw massive demand for coins as silver disappeared from circulation and Americans began hoarding change. The U.S. Mint was under pressure to strike billions of coins quickly, and when production moves fast, tiny mistakes sometimes slip through. This coin features Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, struck in a copper alloy made up of 95% copper and 5% zinc. That composition alone has made older cents increasingly interesting as copper prices rise. But metal value alone doesn't explain why collectors still focus on this specific date. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch. 1968 marked the first year the mint restored mint marks to coins after several years of removing them to discourage hoarding. That tiny D below the date instantly places this penny in a unique historical moment. And for some collectors, that alone makes it a key piece of late 20th century coin history. But history doesn't drive major value. Rarity and condition does. This is where many people get confused. Millions upon millions of 1968 D pennies were minted. In circulated condition, most are worth only a few cents over face value. But coins that were never spent, never scratched, never dulled by circulation, especially those with sharp details and original red luster, become exponentially scarcer. Collectors grade coins on a scale, and at the very top levels, MS67, MS68, and higher population numbers drop dramatically. Some certified examples in these grades have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on timing, demand, and eye appeal. These are not everyday results, but they are verified sales, and they're what keep this date under serious collector attention. This difference can completely change interest, because the jump from a common coin to a high-grade coin isn't gradual. It's explosive. Now let's talk about varieties, because this is where hidden financial potential often lies. Some 1968 cents show doubled dies, repunched mint marks, or unusual die cracks and strikes. These are coins created when dies were misaligned or damaged, causing design elements to appear doubled or distorted. Most people never notice them. Some spend them unknowingly. Others overlook them in jars for decades. And this is where many people get confused. Not all doubling is valuable. Machine doubling, which looks flat and shelf-like, usually adds little value. But true doubled dies, especially on the date or lettering, can attract serious buyer attention. Some varieties have sold for hundreds or more, depending on strength and condition. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: the sharpness of Lincoln's cheek, jawline, and coat lines. These are high points that wear quickly. If those details are crisp and untouched, it often means the coin never circulated, and that dramatically changes how collectors view it. So, what are realistic value ranges? In worn, circulated condition, most 1968 pennies are worth between 1 and 3 cents. Clean but circulated examples might bring 5 to 10 cents in bulk lots. Uncirculated coins with decent eye appeal can sell for a few dollars. But high-grade certified examples, especially MS67 red or better, have sold for hundreds, and select top-tier pieces have reached into four-figure territory in competitive auctions. These are the kinds of life-changing sale results for select examples that most people never expect from a penny, yet they do exist, quietly documented in auction archives. But this is where many people accidentally destroy value. One of the most common mistakes is cleaning coins. Rubbing, polishing, dipping, even gently, permanently damages the surface and removes the original mint luster collectors prize most. A cleaned penny that might have been worth hundreds can drop to near face value instantly. Another mistake is improper storage. Exposure to air, moisture, and chemicals causes copper to darken, spot, or corrode. Coins tossed into jars or plastic bags often lose their appeal long before anyone realizes their potential. And here's another detail collectors quietly watch: color. Original red copper commands a premium. Once a coin turns brown, even if it's technically uncirculated, its value can drop sharply. That's why professional holders and protective storage matter so much. But patience changes outcomes. Some of the most impressive discoveries happen not in vaults or dealer shops, but in ordinary homes. A coffee can inherited from a parent. A coin folder filled decades ago and forgotten. A roll of pennies tucked into a drawer since childhood. This difference can completely change interest, because time often protects coins better than people do. And while not every 1968 penny will bring high value, some absolutely carry quiet wealth discovery potential, especially when condition, color, and strike quality align just right. This is where many people get confused. Value isn't always obvious. Two coins from the same year and mint can look similar at first glance, yet one sells for $1 and the other for 1,000. The difference lives in microscopic details, surface quality, and collector demand, things most people were never taught to notice. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: how the light reflects off the fields. A smooth, undisturbed surface with strong cartwheel luster signals originality. Breaks in that luster often mean wear or cleaning. That single trait can be the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. So if you own 1968 pennies, especially ones with a small d beneath the date, don't rush to spend them. Take a closer look. Use a magnifier, check for doubling, look for bright red color, compare surfaces. And if you believe you found something exceptional, professional grading can confirm it, though it's best reserved for coins that already appear high quality. This difference can completely change interest, because knowledge turns guessing into strategy. And the most powerful truth about coins like the 1968 D Lincoln cent is this: most valuable examples weren't discovered quickly. They were discovered carefully, slowly, by people willing to learn, compare, and wait. That's where hidden financial potential often reveals itself. So tonight, or tomorrow, open that jar. Flip through that album. Check those rolls in your drawer. You might not find anything unusual, but you might find a coin that's been quietly waiting decades to be noticed. And if you want to continue learning which Lincoln cents collectors quietly compete for, and which dates have produced the most surprising auction results, watch the next video recommended on your screen. Because in coin collecting, patience beats speed, knowledge beats luck, and sometimes the smallest coin carries the biggest story. If you've ever dumped a jar of old pennies onto the table and wondered if any of them could secretly be worth more than face value, today's coin might surprise you. The 1970 Lincoln penny with a D mint mark is one of those dates that most people overlook. Yet some verified examples have sold for unusually high prices compared to what you'd expect from a modern cent. Not everyone is valuable, and there are no guarantees, but for select examples, this coin has shown quiet wealth discovery potential that continues to fascinate collectors today. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what separates ordinary pocket change from coins that attract serious attention. Let's start with the basics. The year 1970 sits at the edge of a major shift in American coinage history. Just a few years earlier, the U.S. Mint removed silver from circulating coins, and copper prices were climbing. Pennies were still made mostly of copper in 1970, but changes were coming. The Denver Mint, marked with a small d beneath the date, struck hundreds of millions of these coins that year. That means most 1970 D pennies are common. But here's where many people get confused. Rarity in coins isn't just about how many were made. It's about condition, variety, and specific details that collectors quietly watch. On the surface, the 1970 D Lincoln cent looks simple. Abraham Lincoln's portrait faces right, the date reads 1970, and the D mint mark sits just below it. On the reverse, you see the Lincoln Memorial design that had been in use since 1959. The composition is about 95% copper, which already makes these cents heavier and more desirable to some collectors compared to modern zinc cents. But copper content alone doesn't make this coin valuable. This difference can completely change interest, and that difference lies in condition and varieties. In everyday circulated condition, most 1970 D pennies are worth only a few cents. You might find one in pocket change, in old coffee cans, or in family collections. But once you move into higher grade examples, coins that were never spent, never scratched, and never dulled by circulation, the value picture changes quickly. This is where many people get confused, because a coin that looks nice to the average person may still be considered low grade to collectors. Tiny marks, dull surfaces, or weak strikes can dramatically reduce interest. Now, let's talk about why collectors still focus on this date. The late 1960s and early 1970s were years of massive coin production, but quality control wasn't always perfect. Dies wore down, minting pressure varied, and small errors slipped through. Over time, collectors noticed that certain 1970 cents, including some from Denver, showed unusual details, striking characteristics, or subtle varieties that made them stand out. This is where patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income, not because they expected it, but because they took time to learn what they had. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: the overall strike quality. Some 1970 D pennies were weakly struck, especially around Lincoln's hair and the lettering on the reverse. Strong, crisp strikes with full details are far less common, and those attract more serious buyer interest. Even without an error or variety, A perfectly struck, blazing red 1970D cent in top condition can command surprisingly strong prices at auction compared to ordinary examples. And that brings us to color, something many owners completely overlook. Copper coins are graded not only by wear but also by surface color. You'll hear terms like brown, red-brown, and red. Brown coins have darkened naturally over time. Red-brown coins still show some original mint color. Fully red coins, especially after decades, are far rarer. This difference can completely change interest, because two coins from the same year and mint, both uncirculated, can be valued very differently based solely on color preservation. Now let's talk realistic value ranges. In heavily circulated condition, a 1970D penny is typically worth 1 to 3 cents. In nicer circulated grades, it may bring a small premium, perhaps 5 to 10 cents. In uncirculated condition, values can jump into the dollar range, especially for coins with strong luster and minimal marks. But in top-tier certified grades, especially with full red color, some 1970D cents have sold for surprisingly high amounts, occasionally reaching into the hundreds of dollars, and in exceptional cases, even higher. These are not everyday outcomes, but they represent life-changing sale results for select examples, and that's why this coin remains on collectors' radar. This is where many people get confused. They hear about high auction prices and assume all 1970D pennies are valuable. That's not true. Most are common. The excitement lies in the small percentage that survive in extraordinary condition or display special characteristics. Collectors don't chase averages, they chase exceptions. Now let's look at varieties and errors. While the most famous 1970 variety is actually the 1970s small date from San Francisco, Denver coins are not entirely off the hook. Some 1970D cents show minor doubled dies, repunched mint marks, or striking errors such as off-center strikes or clipped planchets. These errors are not common, but when they appear, collector interest rises sharply. This difference can completely change interest, because a regular uncirculated coin might sell for a few dollars, while a verified error example could sell for dozens, hundreds, or more depending on severity and eye appeal. Another detail collectors quietly watch is surface preservation. Copper is reactive. Exposure to moisture, oils, heat, or improper storage can permanently damage a coin's surface. Spots, streaks, and corrosion can destroy value even on otherwise high-grade coins. That's why two coins that look nearly identical at first glance can have dramatically different market results once examined closely by professionals. Let's talk about mistakes owners make that reduce value, because avoiding these errors can be just as important as finding a good coin. The most common mistake is cleaning. Scrubbing a penny, soaking it in chemicals, or polishing it might make it look shiny to the eye, but to collectors, it destroys originality. Cleaned coins almost always lose most of their collector value. This is where many people get confused, thinking shine equals value, when in reality, originality is what buyers pay for. Another mistake is improper storage. Tossing coins into jars, drawers, or envelopes allows them to rub against each other, causing scratches and wear. High-grade coins should be stored in protective holders, away from humidity and heat. A coin that might have been worth significant money can lose most of that potential simply through careless handling. A third mistake is assuming rarity without verification. Not every unusual-looking coin is rare. Some damage happens after minting, and collectors won't pay premiums for that. This difference can completely change interest, because verified mint errors command strong attention, while post-mint damage usually does not. Now let's step back and talk about why stories surrounding this coin continue to circulate. Every year, collectors quietly upgrade their sets, searching for better examples of dates they already own. A 1970 cent that might have seemed unremarkable decades ago can suddenly become valuable if it turns out to be a top-grade survivor or a scarce variety. This is where patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income, not because they rushed to sell, but because they waited, learned, and verified what they had. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: certified population reports. These reports track how many coins have been graded at each level by professional services. When only a handful of 1970 cents exist in the highest grades, competition among collectors can drive prices much higher than most people expect for a modern penny. This quiet scarcity is what fuels some of the strongest auction results, and what creates hidden financial potential for the right coin. Let's walk through a realistic example. Imagine two people each own a 1970 penny. One is dark brown, worn smooth from decades in circulation. It's worth maybe 2 cents. The other is bright red, sharply struck, and has been stored safely since the day it left the mint. It grades at the very top of the scale and sells for several $100s. Same year, same mint, same design, completely different outcomes. This is where many people get confused and where knowledge becomes more valuable than luck. Collectors also care about eye appeal. Even among coins with the same technical grade, the one with better color, stronger luster, and fewer distracting marks can sell for significantly more. This difference can completely change interest, because buyers are emotional as well as analytical. They want coins that look exceptional, not just ones that meet technical standards. Now let's talk about something most people overlook: patience. Many of the strongest sale results don't happen immediately. They happen when owners take time to authenticate their coins, understand market conditions, and wait for the right buyer. This is where quiet wealth discovery happens. Not overnight, not guaranteed, but through careful decisions and timing. Knowledge and patience matter far more than speed. Another detail collectors quietly watch is originality. Coins that have never been cleaned, altered, or mishandled retain something called natural surfaces. These surfaces age gracefully and are highly prized. Once altered, that originality can never be restored. That's why professionals always recommend leaving coins exactly as you found them and letting experts handle grading and authentication. So what should you realistically expect if you find a 1970 penny today? Most examples will be common and worth only a few cents. Some uncirculated coins may be worth a few dollars. A smaller group, those in exceptional condition with strong color and strike, may bring tens or even hundreds of dollars. And a very small number, especially certified top grade or unusual error examples, have achieved life-changing sale results for select examples. Not because every coin does this, but because the best survivors always command attention. This is where many people get confused, thinking value comes from age alone. But age is just one factor. Condition, rarity, demand, and verification all matter more. A 100-year-old coin in poor condition can be worth less than a 50-year-old coin in perfect condition. The 1970 penny proves this better than almost any modern cent. Let's talk about what you can do right now. If you have old pennies, especially from the late 1960s and early 1970s, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for the D mint mark under the year. Examine the surfaces under good lighting. Are they bright red, red-brown, or dark brown? Are there scratches, spots, or discoloration? Does the strike look sharp, especially in Lincoln's hair and the lettering? This difference can completely change interest, and it's something you can evaluate at home before ever contacting a dealer. If you think you've found something special, resist the urge to clean it. Place it in a protective holder or small plastic flip. Consider having it examined by a reputable coin dealer or submitting it to a professional grading service if the condition seems exceptional. This is where many people get confused, skipping verification, and either underselling a great coin or holding onto one that isn't truly scarce. Knowledge protects you in both directions. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: consistency. If your coin matches known high-grade examples in color, strike, and surface quality, that's when interest grows. If not, it may still be a nice collectible but not a high-value one. Either way, understanding what you own puts you in control. The story of the 1970 Lincoln penny isn't about guaranteed riches. It's about hidden financial potential, quiet wealth discovery, and the idea that ordinary-looking coins can sometimes carry extraordinary outcomes, but only when the right conditions come together. That's what keeps collectors searching through rolls, jars, and old collections decades after these coins were minted. And this is where patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income, not because they chased hype, but because they respected the process. They learned, they verified, they waited. And when the right buyer came along, the results spoke for themselves. Before you go, take a moment to check your own pennies. That small D under the date could belong to a coin that's ordinary or one that's quietly exceptional. Either way, the knowledge you gain from understanding these details is valuable on its own. If you want to continue this journey, watch our next video on another Lincoln penny date that has surprised collectors with unexpected auction results. Because in the world of coins, the smallest details often make the biggest difference. And patience, knowledge, and curiosity always matter more than speed. If you've ever dumped a handful of old pennies onto a table and wondered if any of them could actually matter, stay with me for a moment. Because today's coin, the 1975 Lincoln penny with the D mint mark, looks completely ordinary at first glance. Millions were made, most are still worth just 1 cent, and yet verified examples of this exact date and mint have sold for unusually high prices under very specific conditions. Not hype, not guesses, real sales. And the reason why might surprise you, especially if you've ever saved coins from pocket change, jars, or inherited collections. This is one of those coins where the story isn't about rarity alone. It's about tiny details, quiet collector demand, and how patience can sometimes lead to unexpected income, what some collectors call a quiet wealth discovery. Let's break it down. The year 1975 sits right in the middle of America's modern coinage era. Gas lines, inflation, a changing economy, and the U.S. Mint was producing massive quantities of coins to keep up with everyday commerce. The Denver Mint alone struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents that year. That's billion with a B, so on the surface. The 1975 D penny feels like the definition of common. But this is where many people get confused, because in the coin world, mintage numbers don't tell the full story. What actually drives interest, and sometimes serious value, is condition, scarcity within condition, and very specific minting characteristics that only reveal themselves under close inspection. The 1975 D Lincoln cent was made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc, which already separates it from modern pennies made after 1982 that are mostly zinc. That copper composition gives the coin its deeper weight, warmer color, and long-term collector appeal. But composition alone doesn't create high value. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: surface quality. Most 1975 D pennies circulated immediately and picked up scratches, dullness, and wear. But a very small number survived in unusually clean condition, never entering circulation. And those are the coins that change the entire conversation. Collectors use a grading scale that runs from poor condition all the way to perfect mint state. And this difference can completely change interest. A circulated 1975 D penny, usually worth face value, maybe a few cents if it's shiny. But in certified high-grade condition, especially mint state 67 and above, this same coin has sold for hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in verified auction results. Not because the date is rare, not because Denver made a mistake, but because almost no examples survived in that condition. That's what creates demand. That's what creates competition. This is where many people get confused. They assume value comes from age alone. But a 1975 penny in average condition is actually more common than many pennies from the 1940s or even earlier. What makes the difference is preservation. It's like having a newspaper from a historic day. Most were thrown away, but the few that stayed pristine become valuable decades later. Now let's talk about mint marks. The D on this coin means it was struck in Denver. There were also pennies made in Philadelphia in 1975 with no mint mark, and those have their own market. But collectors specifically track Denver strikes because of subtle differences in strike quality and surface texture. Some Denver examples from this year show exceptionally sharp details, especially in Lincoln's hair and beard, and those are the coin's grading services reward with higher scores. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: luster. Original mint luster, that cartwheel shine when you tilt the coin under light, matters enormously. A coin can be uncirculated but still dull from poor storage. That dullness can drop its value by hundreds of dollars. Meanwhile, a sharply struck, blazing red copper example can jump into an entirely different price category. Now let's talk about varieties. Unlike some famous error coins, the 1975 D penny isn't known for widespread dramatic mistakes. But subtle variations exist: die cracks, minor doubling, and planchet flaws that specialists monitor closely. Most of these don't command huge premiums, but certain error combinations, when authenticated and graded, have achieved life-changing sale results for select examples. Not common, not expected, but documented. This is where many people get confused, because they see a small mark or blur and assume it's a rare error. In reality, most are just damage from circulation. True mint errors usually show clear patterns and specific diagnostics that professionals look for. That's why certification matters. So let's talk realistic value ranges, without exaggeration, without hype. A circulated 1975 D penny, brown in color, worn, no shine, is usually worth 1 cent. Sometimes 2 or 3 cents in bulk copper value, but nothing dramatic. An uncirculated example, bright, sharp, no wear, might sell for 10 to 50 cents raw, depending on eye appeal. A certified Mint State 65 red example can sell for $10 to $30. A Mint State 66 red example can climb into the $50 to $150 range. But here's where things shift dramatically: Mint State 67 red and higher. These are coins that survived nearly perfect, no visible marks, blazing luster, strong strike. Auction records show that some of these have sold for several $100s, and in exceptional cases, into the thousands. Not because every coin does this, but because so few qualify. This difference can completely change interest. Two pennies from the same year, same mint, same metal, one worth a cent, the other worth more than a week's paycheck, simply because of condition and preservation. And this is why patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income. They don't rush to dump coins at face value. They learn what they have. They get opinions. They let the market decide. Now let's talk about mistakes owners make, because this is where value is often destroyed before anyone even realizes it. First, cleaning coins. This is one of the fastest ways to erase collector interest. Even gentle rubbing leaves microscopic scratches that grading services instantly detect. A cleaned coin, no matter how shiny, often loses most of its premium value. Second, improper storage. Pennies stored loose in jars, plastic bags, or damp environments can develop spots, corrosion, or dull surfaces. Copper is especially sensitive. Original color matters. Once it's gone, it rarely comes back. Third, assuming all old pennies are valuable or that none are. Both extremes cause people to miss opportunities. The truth lives in the middle. Most are common, but select examples carry hidden financial potential. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: color designation. Certified copper pennies are labeled red, red-brown, or brown. Red examples, meaning they retain most of their original mint color, can be worth several times more than identical coins that have toned brown. That single word on a grading label can completely change interest. And now let's talk about psychology, because this is what makes the 1975D penny fascinating. Most people ignore modern-era coins. They assume anything after the 1960s can't be valuable. But advanced collectors know that condition rarity often matters more than date rarity. And when thousands of collectors compete for a few dozen top-grade examples, prices rise quietly, not in headlines, not in viral posts, but in auction rooms and private sales. That's where quiet wealth discovery happens. Not overnight, not guaranteed, but through knowledge, patience, and careful evaluation. This is where many people get confused. They chase viral stories about million-dollar pennies, but ignore realistic opportunities hiding in plain sight. The 1975D penny isn't famous. It isn't dramatic, but in elite condition, it has produced verified high-dollar results, and that's exactly why experienced collectors respect it. So what should you do if you think you might have one? First, check the date 1975. Second, look for the D mint mark below the date. Third, examine the surface. Is there wear on Lincoln's cheek or jaw? Is the color bright copper or dull brown? Do you see strong detail in the hair and beard? Fourth, tilt it under light. Does it flash with cartwheel luster or look flat? This difference can completely change interest. If the coin looks unusually clean, unusually sharp, and unusually bright, especially if it's been stored safely for decades, that's when professional grading becomes worth considering. Certification doesn't guarantee high value, but it unlocks the market's ability to judge condition fairly. And that's where life-changing sale results for select examples become possible, not common, not expected, but real. Here's another detail collectors quietly watch: strike quality. Some Denver coins from this era show softer details, especially in Lincoln's hair above the ear. Coins with crisp hair strands and sharp lettering often grade higher, even if everything else looks similar. That tiny difference can move a coin into an entirely different value tier. And now for something most people never think about: timing. Coin markets fluctuate. Copper prices change. Collector demand shifts. A coin that sells for $200 one year might sell for $500 another year, or less, depending on how many buyers show up. That's why patience matters more than speed. Rushing to sell usually leads to low offers. Knowledge and timing create leverage. This is where many people get confused. They assume selling fast equals winning. But in numismatics, slow and informed often beats quick and impulsive. So let's summarize the reality of the 1975D Lincoln penny. Most are worth face value. Some are worth modest premiums. A very small number, those in elite certified condition, have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Not because the date is rare, not because the mint made huge mistakes, but because survival in near-perfect condition is rare. That's the entire story. And that's why this coin remains quietly watched by collectors, not flashy, not viral, but respected. If you have jars of old pennies, inherited collections, or saved change from decades ago, it's worth slowing down and looking closely. Because sometimes, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is something most people overlook. Before you go, I encourage you to check your own pennies carefully, especially your 1970s copper cents, and compare them to what you've just learned. And if you want to go deeper, watch our next video on another modern-era Lincoln penny that surprised collectors with unexpected value. Because in this world, knowledge and patience matter more than speed, and the smallest details can unlock hidden financial potential. Most people would never guess that a single penny from 1976, the year of America's bicentennial, could quietly attract serious collector attention. But a small number of verified 1976D Lincoln cents have sold for prices that surprise even long-time coin owners. Not because every example is rare, but because a few specific versions carry hidden details that completely change interest. And if you've ever sorted through old change, this is one of those coins that deserves a second look, carefully, patiently, and with the right knowledge. This is where many people get confused. Most people assume that if a coin is from the 1970s, it can't possibly be worth more than face value. But collectors don't focus on age alone. They focus on condition, composition, mint characteristics, and unusual strike qualities. And the 1976 D Lincoln penny quietly checks several of those boxes in the right situations. Let's take a moment to understand where this coin comes from. In 1976, the United States was celebrating its 200th anniversary. While quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins received special bicentennial designs, the Lincoln cent stayed the same: Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But that doesn't mean collectors ignored pennies from that year. In fact, billions were struck and millions were saved because people assumed something special might happen with bicentennial coins. The Denver Mint produced the majority of pennies in 1976, all marked with the small d beneath the date. These were standard circulation coins, made mostly from copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc, just like earlier cents, before the switch to copper-plated zinc in 1982. But here's a detail collectors quietly watch. Not all 1976 D pennies were struck the same way, and not all survived the same way. Most circulated examples today are worth only a cent or two. That's the reality, and it's important to say that up front. But certain examples, especially in high-grade condition or with unusual strike characteristics, have sold for dramatically higher amounts. And that's where curiosity turns into serious collector interest. This difference can completely change interest. Condition is everything. A worn 1976 D penny with scratches, dull surfaces, or heavy contact marks usually holds no premium. But a sharply struck example with full mint luster, clean fields, and strong detail on Lincoln's hair and coat can move into collector territory. And when a coin reaches the highest certified grades, especially MS67 or higher, demand changes completely. Some professionally graded 1976 D Lincoln cents in exceptional condition have sold for hundreds, and in rare cases, even higher. Not because the date itself is rare. It isn't, but because nearly all examples were mishandled, circulated heavily, or stored improperly. Truly pristine survivors are scarce. This is where many people get confused. They assume rarity means low mintage. But in modern coins, rarity often means low survival and high condition. Now let's talk about composition, because this matters more than most people realize. The 1976 D penny is part of the final era of solid copper cents. Collectors often prefer copper composition over later zinc versions because copper ages better, tones beautifully, and feels heavier and more substantial. That alone increases long-term collector demand, especially for coins in original mint condition. But there's another layer collectors quietly watch: strike quality. Some 1976 D cents were struck with unusually strong detail, sharp Lincoln cheekbones, crisp lettering, full separation in the hair strands, and strong lines in the memorial columns. These well-struck examples stand out immediately to trained eyes. And when they're combined with flawless surfaces and bright luster, they become candidates for premium certification and premium prices. This difference can completely change interest. Now let's talk realistic values. In circulated condition, most 1976 D pennies are worth face value 1 cent, or maybe a few cents if they're unusually clean. In uncirculated condition, raw examples can sell for anywhere from 25 cents to a few dollars, depending on quality. But certified coins in top grades are a different category entirely. MS65 examples often sell for $10 to $30. MS66 coins can range from $40 to over $100. An MS67 or higher, where only a tiny fraction of survivors qualify, have recorded sales in the hundreds of dollars, and sometimes more, depending on market demand and eye appeal. That's not hype, that's documented collector behavior. This is where many people get confused. They hear about high prices and assume their pocket change example qualifies. But the difference between a $1 coin and a $300 coin can be nearly invisible to untrained eyes. Tiny marks, weak strikes, dull luster, or cleaning can destroy collector interest. And that brings us to one of the biggest mistakes owners make: cleaning. Even gentle rubbing with a cloth can permanently damage the surface of a coin. It removes original mint luster and leaves microscopic scratches that grading services immediately detect. A cleaned coin, no matter how shiny, is usually worth less than a naturally aged one. This difference can completely change interest. Another mistake is improper storage. Coins stored loose in jars, drawers, or bags develop contact marks over time, and those marks quietly erase value. Serious collectors store coins in inert holders, capsules, or certified slabs to preserve condition. But here's a detail collectors quietly watch: toning. Natural toning, especially colorful or even copper-red surfaces that haven't darkened, can dramatically increase desirability. Some collectors specifically seek out original red copper examples from the 1970s because they're increasingly difficult to find. And when one of those surfaces appears on a sharply struck 1976D cent with no marks, that's when the phrase "quiet wealth discovery" starts to make sense. Not because it's common, not because it's easy, but because patient owners sometimes realize they've been holding something special without knowing it. This is where many people get confused. They think valuable coins always look old, dark, or damaged. In reality, the most valuable modern coins often look almost brand new, and that's exactly why they're rare. Now let's talk about varieties. Unlike some famous error years, the 1976D penny isn't known for a long list of dramatic die varieties, but collectors still watch closely for subtle doubling, unusual die cracks, off-center strikes, or planchet errors. These are uncommon, but when verified, they can multiply value dramatically, especially if the coin is also in high condition. This difference can completely change interest, but even without dramatic errors, condition alone has created life-changing sale results for select examples. That doesn't mean every coin will reach those levels, far from it, but it does mean this date cannot be dismissed casually. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: population reports. Grading services publish data showing how many coins exist in each grade. For the 1976D penny, the number of coins graded MS67 and higher is extremely small compared to the billions minted. That scarcity, not production rarity, but survival rarity, is what drives premium prices. And this is why some collectors focus on this coin year after year. Because the supply of top-condition examples doesn't increase, but demand steadily grows as more collectors enter the hobby, more sets are built, and more coins are removed from the market into long-term collections. This is where many people get confused. They think the best time to sell is immediately. But patient sellers often achieve better outcomes by waiting for strong market cycles, increased collector demand, or the right buyer looking to complete a registry set. That patience is sometimes how quiet wealth discovery happens. Now let's talk about what separates common examples from premium ones, in plain language. Premium examples usually have bright, original mint luster, strong, sharp strike detail, no visible marks or scratches, full red copper surfaces, professional certification. Common examples usually show dull surfaces, tiny nicks or spots, weak strike areas, brown or darkened copper, signs of cleaning. This difference can completely change interest. And here's another mistake owners make: spending coins without checking both sides carefully. Some coins appear ordinary at first glance but reveal strong luster, crisp details, or unusual characteristics under proper lighting. A quick look in a dim room can cause someone to miss a potential premium example entirely. This is where many people get confused. They believe valuable coins always announce themselves. In reality, the most interesting coins often look boring until you know what to look for. Now let's talk honestly about expectations. The average 1976 D penny in circulation is worth 1 cent. That will never change. But a small percentage of survivors, especially those preserved since the 1970s, sit in a completely different category. And that's where hidden financial potential exists. Not in hype, not in lottery thinking, but in careful evaluation, proper storage, and patient selling. This difference can completely change interest. Some collectors have discovered that a coin saved decades ago in a drawer, album, or forgotten roll turned into several $100s or more, simply because it survived in exceptional condition. That's not fantasy. That's documented collector history. And that's why the 1976 D Lincoln penny remains relevant. Not because it's rare, but because rare quality examples exist within a common date, and those are exactly the coins collectors compete for. This is where many people get confused. They assume only Pennies 1,900 coins matter. But modern coins in elite condition often outperform much older coins that exist in abundance. Now here's what smart collectors actually do. They don't rush. They don't clean. They don't guess. They examine coins under proper light, compare them to graded examples online, and consider professional certification only when a coin truly appears exceptional. This difference can completely change interest. And here's something else most people never consider: market timing. Coin markets move in cycles. Demand increases when more collectors enter the hobby, when metals prices rise, and when registry competition heats up. Patient sellers sometimes benefit simply by waiting for stronger demand, and that's how unexpected income occasionally appears from something that once seemed insignificant. That's quiet wealth discovery. Not loud, not instant, but real. Now let's bring this back to you. If you have old pennies, especially rolls, jars, or albums from the 1970s, the 1976 D deserves a closer look. Not because every coin is valuable, but because a small percentage quietly stand apart, and those are the ones collectors search for. This is where many people get confused. They stop after checking 1 or 2 coins. But premium examples are rare by definition, and finding one sometimes takes time, patience, and attention to detail. And that patience is often the difference between overlooking something and discovering hidden financial potential. Before we wrap up, here's the most important takeaway. The value of a 1976 D Lincoln penny isn't about hype. It's about condition, preservation, and collector demand. Most examples are ordinary. A few are extraordinary. And knowing the difference puts you in a position of knowledge, not luck. And that knowledge matters more than speed. So take your time. Check your coins carefully. Avoid cleaning. Store anything promising safely. And if you're curious about other Lincoln pennies that have produced life-changing sale results for select examples, watch the next video. Because some of the most surprising dates aren't the oldest ones at all. In the world of coin collecting, patience beats impulse. Knowledge beats guesswork. And sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest stories. If you've ever looked at a 1987 penny with a small D under the date and thought, "This one's too modern to matter," stay with me. Because some verified examples of this exact coin have sold for prices that surprised even experienced collectors. Not everyone finds one, and nothing is guaranteed. But what separates ordinary pocket change from quiet wealth discovery often comes down to tiny details most people never check. And in the next few minutes, you'll learn exactly what those details are. The 1987 Lincoln cent with the Denver Mint mark was produced during a turning point in U.S. coin history. Just a few years earlier, the mint shifted from mostly copper pennies to copper-plated zinc. By 1987, These zinc-based cents were standard, lighter in weight, and cheaper to produce. At the time, no one thought twice about them. They were just everyday coins, spent on gum, parking meters, and coffee counters across America. But here's where many people get confused: modern coins aren't automatically worthless. Collectors don't chase age alone. They chase rarity, condition, and anomalies, and the 1980-70 penny quietly checks more of those boxes than most people realize. Over 3.5 billion 1980-70 pennies were struck in Denver. That number sounds massive, and it is. But survival in high-grade condition is far lower than people expect. These coins were heavily used in circulation, and because zinc cents damage easily, pristine examples are far scarcer today than the original mintage suggests. This is where collectors quietly watch the difference between just another penny and a coin with hidden financial potential. A circulated 1980-70 cent, the kind found in jars and drawers, usually trades for face value or a few cents. But once you step into uncirculated territory, especially coins graded by professional services, the numbers begin to shift. This difference can completely change interest. In certified mint state condition, especially MS67 and above, select examples have achieved prices that surprise casual collectors. Some verified high-grade pieces have sold for hundreds of dollars, and in exceptional cases, even higher, not because the date is old, but because perfection is rare. That's the kind of quiet wealth discovery most people never expect from a coin made in the late 1980s. Now, let's talk about what collectors actually look for. First, the mint mark. The small d under the date tells us this coin was struck in Denver. Philadelphia coins from 1987 usually have no mint mark, and San Francisco coins were mostly proof strikes made for collectors. The Denver coins were circulation strikes, and while most are common, condition is everything. Second, the composition. A genuine 1980-70 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams and be copper-plated zinc. If you find one that weighs closer to 3.1 grams, the weight of older copper cents, that's where things get interesting. Transitional errors are rare, but if a 1987 penny were struck on an older copper planchet, collectors would pay serious attention. These are the kinds of coins that sometimes lead to life-changing sale results for select examples, but they must be authenticated. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: strike quality. Many 1980-70 cents were weakly struck, especially in Lincoln's hair and the wheat lines in the Memorial Building on the reverse. Coins with sharp details, full design elements, and clean surfaces stand out immediately in grading rooms. Those subtle differences often separate a $1 coin from a $100 plus coin. Another area collectors examine is errors and varieties. Common errors include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and doubled dies. While most 1980-70 pennies are normal, documented error examples have sold for significant premiums, especially when the error is dramatic and the coin is in strong condition. Even a moderate error can multiply value compared to a standard cent. This is where many people get confused. Not every strange-looking penny is valuable. Damage after leaving the mint, like scratches, corrosion, or heat exposure, doesn't increase value. Collectors want mint-made errors, not circulation damage. Knowing the difference saves people from disappointment and helps them focus on coins with real hidden financial potential. Now let's talk realistic values. A worn 1980-70 penny is usually worth face value, about 1 cent. A bright, uncirculated example found in a roll or old collection might bring anywhere from a few cents to a couple of dollars. But once a coin is professionally graded and reaches higher mint state levels, values can rise sharply. Coins graded MS65 may sell in the $10 to $30 range, depending on eye appeal and market demand. MS66 examples can move into the $40 to $80 range. And MS-67 coins, which are extremely difficult to find, have achieved prices in the hundreds. These aren't everyday results, but they are documented, and they explain why collectors and investors still quietly study this date. This difference can completely change interest. Now let's talk about mistakes that reduce value, because this is where many potential discoveries are lost. The first mistake is cleaning coins. Even gentle polishing removes original surfaces and destroys collector value. A cleaned 1987 penny that might have graded high can instantly drop back to face value. Collectors prefer original, untouched surfaces, even if the coin has minor spots or toning. The second mistake is improper storage. Zinc cents corrode easily when exposed to moisture or air. Coins stored loose in jars, damp basements, or plastic bags often develop bubbling or discoloration that permanently lowers grade potential. The third mistake is assuming all modern pennies are worthless and spending them without checking. Most are common, yes, but the rare exceptions are exactly what collectors hunt. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: the rim and edges. Zinc cents are prone to edge damage and plating splits. Coins with full, smooth rims and intact copper plating are much more likely to receive high grades, and that can dramatically affect resale interest. Another overlooked factor is strike alignment. Slight off-center strikes that still show the full date can be collectible, and dramatic off-centers can command strong premiums. These aren't common, but they're worth watching for, especially in bulk rolls or inherited collections. This is where patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income. Many collectors who found valuable modern cents didn't find them overnight. They checked rolls slowly, learned grading standards, and waited for the right buyer. Over time, small discoveries added up to something meaningful, not because of luck, but because of knowledge and consistency. Now, let's talk about something most people never hear. Even though billions of 1980-70 cents were minted, population reports from grading services show that only a tiny fraction survive in top condition. And as years pass, zinc cents continue to deteriorate. That means pristine examples quietly become scarcer, which keeps collector interest alive. This is where many people get confused. Rarity isn't just about how many were made. It's about how many still exist in collectible condition. And in that sense, high-grade 1980-70 pennies are far rarer than most people imagine. Some collectors also look for proof-like surfaces on circulation strikes, coins with unusually reflective fields that resemble proof coins. While not official proofs, these can attract strong interest when paired with high grades. And then there's the emotional side of collecting. Many people who find these coins aren't professional dealers. They're everyday Americans who opened an old coffee can, inherited a small collection, or checked rolls from the bank. What starts as curiosity sometimes becomes a quiet wealth discovery. Not massive riches, but meaningful, unexpected value from something overlooked for decades. This difference can completely change interest. So how do you check your own 1980-70 pennies? First, look at the date and mint mark. Confirm it says 1987 with a D under the date. Next, weigh the coin if possible. It should be about 2.5 grams. Anything significantly heavier deserves closer attention. Then examine the surfaces under good lighting. Look for sharp details, clean fields, full rims, and no corrosion or cleaning marks. Finally, check for unusual features, off-center strikes, missing letters, double designs, or strange shapes. If something looks genuinely unusual and not damaged, that's when professional evaluation makes sense. This is where many people get confused. Not every interesting coin needs immediate grading. Sometimes it's smarter to learn first, compare examples, and only submit coins that clearly stand out. Knowledge and patience matter more than speed. And that's really the message behind the 1980-70 Lincoln cent. Most examples are ordinary, but select coins, those with exceptional condition, rare errors, or unusual characteristics, have shown hidden financial potential and, in rare cases, life-changing sale results for select examples. Not because they're old, but because they're rare in ways most people never look for. So before you dismiss your modern pennies, take another look. You might not find anything extraordinary, but sometimes, quiet wealth discovery starts with nothing more than curiosity and a few minutes of careful attention. And if you'd like to learn about another penny date that surprised collectors even more, check out the next video. Because knowledge, patience, and consistency will always outperform speed when it comes to coin collecting. Now go check those pennies. If you've ever dumped a handful of pennies onto your kitchen table and wondered if any of them might be worth more than 1 cent, today's coin might surprise you. The 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark looks completely ordinary at first glance. Most people spend it without a second thought. But here's what collectors quietly know. Some verified examples of this exact date have sold for unusually high prices, not because they're old, but because of rare details most people miss. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for, and why patience with the right penny can sometimes lead to quiet wealth discovery. This is where many people get confused, because when they hear valuable pennies, they usually think about coins from the early 1900s, wheat cents, or famous errors from the 1940s and 1950s. But the 1991 no mint mark Lincoln penny belongs to a much newer generation of coins, and that's exactly what makes it interesting. It sits in an era when billions were produced, but only a tiny fraction show the traits collectors are willing to pay serious money for today. Let's start with what this coin actually is. In 1991, Lincoln cents were struck at 3 U.S. mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Philadelphia carry no mint mark, which means if your 1991 penny has no letter under the date, it was made there. Most of these were struck in copper-plated zinc, about 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating, making them much lighter than older bronze cents. To most people, that makes them feel cheap or disposable. But here's a detail collectors quietly watch. This era of zinc cents is known for production issues, weak strikes, plating flaws, and rare die varieties that can turn a common-looking penny into something far more desirable. Now, in raw circulated condition, most 1991 no mint mark pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. And that's important to say clearly. But value in coins doesn't come from age alone. It comes from condition, rarity within the date, and specific varieties or errors that separate ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. This difference can completely change interest, and sometimes price. Collectors focus on this date for several reasons. First, it's part of the modern Lincoln Memorial Series, which many collectors specialize in. Second, it sits right in the middle of a period when quality control challenges created coins with subtle but collectible differences. And third, high-grade examples, especially those graded by professional services, are far scarcer than most people realize. Here's where things start to get interesting. A typical circulated 1991 no mint mark penny might be worth 1 to 3 cents. Even uncirculated rolls from bankrupt sources usually bring only a small premium. But certified coins in near-perfect condition, graded MS67, MS68, and above, are in an entirely different category. These are coins that survive the minting process with almost no marks, strong luster, clean surfaces, and sharp details. And this is where many people get confused, because a coin doesn't need to be old to be rare in top condition. In fact, modern coins can be harder to find in flawless states because they were never saved carefully at the time. Most were dumped into circulation, banged around in counting machines, and scratched before anyone ever thought to preserve them. Some professionally graded 1991 no mint mark pennies in exceptional condition have sold for hundreds, and in rare cases, thousands of dollars. Not because the date itself is rare, but because the quality of those specific coins is. That's what collectors call condition rarity, and it creates real financial separation between two coins that look nearly identical to the untrained eye. Now let's talk about varieties and errors, because this is where life-changing sale results for select examples can sometimes emerge. One of the most watched areas on 1991 pennies is die doubling. That means certain letters, numbers, or parts of Lincoln's profile appear doubled due to a misaligned die during the striking process. True doubled dies are not the same as machine doubling, which is common and adds little value. But genuine doubled die obverse or reverse varieties can command serious interest. Another category collectors watch closely is off-center strikes. If part of the design is missing because the coin wasn't centered when struck and the date is still visible, value can rise significantly depending on how dramatic the shift is. Then there are broad strikes, clipped planchets, and rotated dies, all mechanical errors that create visually distinct coins. Most of these are rare relative to normal production and often sell for much more than face value when authenticated. This is where many people get confused, because scratches, corrosion, or damage from circulation don't increase value, they destroy it. True mint errors happen during production, not afterward. That difference can completely change interest in a coin. Another overlooked factor is strike quality. Some 1991 pennies show weak details, especially on Lincoln's hair and the steps of the memorial building. Strong, sharp strikes are harder to find and more appealing to collectors. When combined with original luster and minimal marks, those coins move into a higher tier of demand. Now let's talk realistically about value ranges, because credibility matters. In circulated condition, expect 1 to 3 cents. In average uncirculated condition, maybe 10 to 50 cents. In high-end uncirculated condition, especially MS66 and above, values can climb into the tens or hundreds. And in rare top population certified examples, sales have reached much higher levels, sometimes into 4 figures, depending on the coin's quality, eye appeal, and timing of the market. Not every 1991 penny will be valuable, and that's okay. But some quietly sit in collections, jars, and drawers with hidden financial potential that only becomes visible after careful inspection. This is where many people get confused, because they assume if a coin isn't old, it can't matter. But modern coins are graded on survival quality, not just production numbers. And most modern coins didn't survive in pristine condition. Now let's talk about mistakes owners make that reduce value. The first is cleaning coins. Polishing, rubbing, or soaking a penny, even gently, can permanently destroy collector interest. That shiny look might seem appealing, but to collectors, it signals damage. And once that surface is altered, value drops dramatically, even if the coin was once high grade. Another mistake is improper storage. Tossing coins into jars, bags, or drawers allows them to rub against each other, causing tiny scratches that add up. The best storage is in non-PVC holders, coin flips, or protective capsules. Another common mistake is assuming online prices reflect real value. Many listings show asking prices, not sold prices. Real market value comes from completed sales, auctions, and certified examples, not hopeful listings. This difference can completely change interest, because realistic expectations protect you from disappointment and help you make better decisions. Now here's something most people don't think about. Sometimes, quiet wealth discovery doesn't come from a single jackpot coin. It comes from consistency. People who carefully check every penny they encounter over time often stumble upon varieties, errors, or high-grade examples others overlook. And while each individual find might not be life-changing, over years, those discoveries can add up in meaningful ways. This is where patience becomes powerful. Let's talk briefly about how collectors actually evaluate a 1991 no-mint mark penny. They look at strike sharpness, especially Lincoln's hair and the memorial lines. They check luster, the natural shine from minting, not artificial gloss. They inspect surfaces for contact marks, spots, or discoloration. And they examine the date and lettering for doubling or unusual shapes. This is where many people get confused, because even small differences can separate a $1 coin from a $100 coin, or a $100 coin from something much more desirable. Collectors also weigh the coin. A standard 1991 cent should weigh about 2.5 grams. Significant deviation could indicate an error planchet, which adds collector interest. And magnet testing helps confirm composition, since steel cents behave very differently, and 1991 cents should not be magnetic. Now let's talk about something that surprises a lot of people. Some of the highest prices paid for modern pennies weren't for dramatic errors. They were for nearly perfect coins. Coins graded MS69 or higher are incredibly rare for circulation strikes. When one surfaces, competitive collectors sometimes drive prices higher than expected, especially when population reports show only one or two known examples at that level. This is where hidden financial potential really shows itself, not through hype, but through rarity, quality, and verified certification. And here's another detail collectors quietly watch: eye appeal. Two coins with the same technical grade can sell for very different prices depending on color, luster, and overall look. A blazing red cent with smooth surfaces often commands a premium over a dull or spotted example. Now let's bring this back to you. If you own jars, rolls, or collections of pennies, the 1991 no mint mark cent is worth checking. Not because everyone is valuable, but because some are. And the only way to know is to look closely, slowly, and carefully. This is where many people get confused because they expect instant answers. But coin discovery is a process. You inspect, research, compare, and sometimes wait. And occasionally, patience pays off in ways that surprise even seasoned collectors. There are stories of people finding valuable modern cents in inherited collections, estate rolls, or even everyday pocket change. Not because they were hunting for wealth, but because they were paying attention. And that's what separates casual spenders from quiet discoverers. Before we wrap up, here's a simple checklist you can use when examining your 1991 no mint mark pennies. First, confirm there's no mint mark under the date. Second, check the condition: strong luster, sharp detail, minimal marks. Third, look for doubling on letters, numbers, or Lincoln's profile. Fourth, examine for off-center strikes, clipped edges, or unusual shapes. Fifth, avoid cleaning or altering the coin in any way. If something looks unusual, consider professional attribution or certification. Not because every coin deserves grading, but because some do, and that step can completely change collector interest. This difference can completely change interest, and sometimes value. Now here's the most important takeaway. Most 1991 no mint mark pennies are ordinary, but a small number carry extraordinary traits, condition, errors, or varieties that elevate them into a different category entirely. And the only way to find them is to look, not fast, not casually, but carefully. That's where hidden financial potential lies, not in hype, but in details. So after this video, take a few minutes to check your own pennies. You might confirm they're common, and that's fine. But you might also spot something unusual that deserves a second look. And sometimes, that second look becomes something far more meaningful. If you'd like to keep learning, watch our next video on another modern Lincoln penny date collectors quietly track. Because some of the most surprising discoveries come from the coins people overlook the most. Remember, in coin collecting, knowledge and patience matter more than speed. And sometimes, quiet wealth discovery starts with a single penny. You might think a 1995 penny is just another coin in your pocket. But what if I told you that some verified examples of the 1995 Lincoln penny, without any mint mark, have quietly sold for prices that make collectors stop and take notice? This isn't hype. It's a real curiosity in the coin world. And today, we're diving into what makes this penny more than just copper and zinc. The 1995 Lincoln penny was minted in Philadelphia, the facility that produces the majority of U.S. coins. Unlike pennies from Denver, which carry a D mint mark, these have no visible mark at all. At first glance, it seems ordinary, but collectors know that even common dates can hide extraordinary potential. This is where many people get confused. Just because a penny is recent, it doesn't mean it can't hold hidden value. The 1995 no mint mark penny sits at the intersection of modern production and collectible rarity. While millions were produced, subtle differences in strike, luster, and condition can dramatically affect interest among seasoned collectors. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: the composition. In 1995, pennies were primarily zinc with a thin copper coating. Some examples show unusual coloring or thickness variations, details that casual owners often overlook. These variations don't appear in every coin, but when they do, they can attract serious attention. Collectors also pay close attention to errors. On the 1995 no mint mark penny, doubling, off-center strikes, or even minor die cracks can transform an ordinary coin into something highly sought after. This difference can completely change interest and sometimes lead to life-changing sale results for select examples. Many owners make the mistake of assuming condition doesn't matter for a modern penny. But even for coins minted in the 90s, uncirculated examples with pristine surfaces, full mint luster, and sharp details command a premium. Circulated pennies can sell for only a few cents, but carefully preserved specimens may quietly reach hundreds or even more in certain collector markets. It's not just about errors or perfect condition. Some pennies have unusual toning, a kind of natural patina that forms over decades. This subtle feature can make a coin highly desirable. Here's where patience pays. Sellers who hold onto these special examples often discover unexpected income, sometimes far beyond what they imagined when they first pulled the coin from a drawer. Another point collectors focus on is grading. Coins certified by professional services like PCGS or NGC carry documented condition scores that boost confidence and, in many cases, value. This is where many people get confused. A high grade doesn't automatically mean a high price, but it does open the door to serious buyers who are willing to pay for verified quality. Some 1995 no mint mark pennies even appear in coin sets or circulation rolls with faint anomalies, like slight die scratches or planchet imperfections. These subtle differences aren't obvious to the casual observer, but can quietly indicate hidden financial potential. Collectors often say that spotting these minor variations is like finding a secret pathway into rare coin collecting. If you're examining your own collection, look closely at the strike quality. Notice how the details of Lincoln's bust and the wheat stalks, or rather, by 1995, the Union Shield reverse, appear. Sharp details, clean edges, and full relief can signal a coin that stands out among millions of others. This is where careful attention can make a difference. Now, let's talk about realistic value. Circulated 1995 no mint mark pennies are generally common and carry minimal collector premium. But high-grade uncirculated coins, especially those with minor errors or exceptional luster, can quietly reach hundreds or even thousands in certain markets. It's not every coin and it's not every seller, but the potential is there for those who know what to look for. Here's another detail collectors quietly watch: storage history. Coins that have spent decades untouched in a bank roll or carefully protected in a collection often retain details that coins handled daily do not. These subtle factors influence interest and sometimes lead to life-changing sale results for select examples. The key takeaway is simple but powerful: knowledge and patience matter more than speed. Take your time to check each coin, look for unusual characteristics, and consider professional grading if you suspect you've uncovered something rare. Mistakes like cleaning coins, rushing a sale, or overlooking minor details can significantly reduce potential value. Before you put this video down, think about your own collection. Do you have a 1995 penny without a mint mark tucked away somewhere? Take a moment to inspect it. Examine its luster, strike, and any subtle anomalies. You might be looking at a quiet wealth discovery hiding in plain sight. If this peek into the 1995 no mint mark Lincoln penny sparked your curiosity, there's more to explore. Check out our next video on rare Lincoln pennies from the 1990s. You might uncover another hidden financial potential waiting to be recognized. Remember, the world of coin collecting isn't about rushing. It's about observing, learning, and patiently uncovering the treasures others often miss. And sometimes, those treasures can quietly change the way you think about a simple penny. If you've ever glanced at a modern penny and thought, "There's no way this could be worth more than 1 cent," today's story might surprise you. Because the 2002 Lincoln penny with a D mint mark is one of those coins that looks ordinary. Yet certain verified examples have sold for prices that stopped collectors in their tracks. Not because every coin is rare, far from it, but because a small number of special versions quietly slipped into circulation, and most people never realized what they were holding. And this is where things get interesting, because many of those coins are still out there today. This is where many people get confused. When people hear about valuable pennies, they often assume you need something from the 1800s or early 1900s. But modern coins, especially from the late 1990s and early 2000s, can carry surprising financial potential when the right combination of condition, minting details, and rarity come together. The 2002 D Lincoln cent is a perfect example of how quiet wealth discovery sometimes starts with coins people ignore every day. Let's take a quick step back. In 2002, the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents annually. The Denver Mint, identified by the small d under the date, struck hundreds of millions of pennies that year. These coins were made primarily of copper-plated zinc, the modern composition introduced in 1982, with a thin copper coating over a zinc core. To most people, they looked identical to every other penny in circulation, and for the majority they were. But here's the detail collectors quietly watch. Mass production creates opportunity for mistakes, and mistakes, when verified and rare, are often what transform ordinary coins into serious collectibles. The 2002 D penny is not famous for its face value rarity. It's famous because of select error varieties, unusual strikes, and high-grade survivors that escaped wear and damage. And this difference can completely change interest. Let's start with the most common version. A typical 2002 D penny pulled from circulation, with scratches, discoloration, or wear, is usually worth face value, maybe a few cents to a collector who needs one for a folder. Even uncirculated examples in average condition might trade for just a small premium. But this is where many people get confused. Collectors don't pay top dollar for age alone. They pay for rarity, condition, and anomalies, especially when they're certified by professional grading services. And this coin has produced several categories that collectors quietly compete for. One of the most watched categories is condition rarity. While millions were struck, very few survive in flawless or near-flawless condition. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect coin under magnification. For modern pennies like the 2002 D, the jump in value between grades like MS65, MS67, and MS69 can be dramatic. Here's the detail collectors quietly watch: surface quality, strike sharpness, luster. Even tiny marks invisible to the naked eye can drop a coin's grade and its market interest significantly. But when a 2002 D penny survives with blazing mint luster, sharp details on Lincoln's hair and jacket, and clean fields, collectors take notice. Certified high-grade examples of modern Lincoln cents have sold for hundreds, and in rare cases, thousands of dollars. especially when population reports show only a handful exist at the top grade level. And this difference can completely change interest. Now let's talk about what really creates excitement around this coin. Mint errors. This is where many people get confused. Not every strange-looking coin is valuable. Scratches, corrosion, and damage after leaving the mint usually reduce value. But errors that happen during the striking process, inside the mint, can create coins that collectors aggressively seek. Some of the known and reported error types seen on 2002D pennies include off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing but still identifiable; broad strikes, where the coin spreads wider than normal; clipped planchets, where part of the metal blank is missing; double strikes or misaligned dies, die cracks and cut errors that distort parts of the design. Here's a detail. Collectors quietly watch errors that are dramatic, clearly visible, and authenticated tend to generate the strongest demand. A slight die crack might add a small premium. A dramatic off-center strike with full date and mint mark can command much more attention, and sometimes life-changing sale results for select examples. But there's one category that consistently draws the strongest collector response: double die errors. These occur when the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned impression during production, causing doubling on letters, numbers, or Lincoln's features. True double dies show clear separation and notching, not blurry damage or mechanical doubling. And this difference can completely change interest. A verified double die 2002D penny, especially one showing strong doubling on Liberty, in God WE Trust, or the date, can attract serious collector interest. Depending on the strength of the doubling, eye appeal, and condition, values can range from modest premiums to thousands of dollars. Now let's talk about realistic value ranges, because this is where credibility matters. A typical circulated 2002D penny. Face value uncirculated but average quality. A few cents to maybe a dollar. High-grade certified examples. Tens to hundreds of dollars top population coins with elite grades. Hundreds to thousands verified major error coins. Potentially hundreds to several $1,000s strong double die varieties. Sometimes four figures or more. Depending on demand and condition, this is where many people get confused. Not every coin with a story becomes valuable. But every high-value coin starts as something ordinary, until collectors identify what makes it different. And here's something most people don't realize. Many of the most valuable modern pennies weren't discovered by professional numismatists. They were found in pocket change, old coin jars, inherited collections, or bank rolls. Patient collectors, and sometimes everyday people, noticed something unusual, did the research, and eventually discovered quiet wealth hiding in plain sight. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: original surfaces. Coins that haven't been cleaned, polished, or altered almost always perform better in the market. Cleaning removes original luster and microscopic surface texture, things graders look for when assigning high grades. And unfortunately, cleaning is one of the biggest mistakes owners make that permanently reduce value. Another mistake: assuming a coin isn't valuable because it's modern, and this difference can completely change interest. Collectors today actively seek high-grade modern issues because building registry sets requires the finest known examples. When population reports show only one or two coins graded at the top level, demand intensifies, even for dates like 2002. Now let's talk about how people accidentally destroy value. This is where many people get confused: rubbing coins between fingers, placing them in PVC plastic flips, storing them loose in jars, or attempting to shine them up for photos can all reduce market appeal. Coins should be stored in non-PVC holders, capsules, or acid-free flips, untouched whenever possible. Another overlooked mistake: selling too quickly without proper identification. Many people sell coins as bulk lots without realizing a single error variety or high-grade example could outperform the rest of the group combined. Knowledge and patience often create better outcomes than speed. And this is where the quiet wealth discovery mindset comes in. Most people who uncover valuable coins don't do it overnight. They learn what to look for. They compare examples. They use magnification. They reference error guides and grading standards. And when something unusual appears, they seek professional opinions before making decisions. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch: certification. Third-party grading services like PCGS and NGC authenticate coins, assign grades, and encapsulate them in protective holders. Certified coins almost always sell for more than raw examples because buyers trust what they're getting. And in high-end modern coins, certification often makes the difference between a modest premium and serious collector competition. And this difference can completely change interest. Now let's return to the 2002 D penny specifically. Why does this date still attract attention? Because it sits at the intersection of massive production and unexpected rarity. Millions exist, but only a tiny fraction survive in elite condition or with major mint errors. That contrast is exactly what drives collector demand. It's not about how many were made. It's about how many survived in exceptional form. And this is where many people get confused. Scarcity isn't always about age. It's about survivorship. A 1909 penny might be common in low grades. A flawless 2002 penny might be far rarer. That perspective shift alone has reshaped modern coin collecting. Let's talk about something even more interesting. Some of the strongest modern penny prices come not from ancient coins, but from coins most people assume are worthless. That psychological disconnect creates opportunity, because when people underestimate modern coins, fewer are saved properly, fewer are preserved at high grades, and fewer survive in collectible condition. And this difference can completely change interest. Now imagine someone who rolls pennies from the bank for years, casually checking dates and mint marks. Most coins go back into circulation, but once in a while, something stands out: a strange strike, doubling, or pristine surface. That single coin, after professional verification, might unlock unexpected income, not guaranteed, not common, but very real for select examples. This is the quiet wealth discovery side of numismatics. Not hype, not promises, just probability, patience, and knowledge. Let's walk through how someone might realistically evaluate their own 2002 D pennies. First, check the date and mint mark. Look for the small d beneath the year. Second, inspect the condition. Is the coin dull and worn, or bright and sharp with strong detail? Third, look closely, preferably with a magnifying glass, at the lettering, date, and Lincoln's features for doubling or distortion. Fourth, check the rim for missing metal, off-center strikes, or unusual shapes. Fifth, if something looks genuinely different, compare it to known error examples or consider professional evaluation. This is where many people get confused. Not every odd-looking coin is valuable, but every valuable error coin looks odd. That distinction matters. Now let's talk about real market psychology. Collectors don't chase coins randomly. They chase scarcity, eye appeal, and verified uniqueness. A coin that combines two or more of these, for example, a dramatic error in high condition, tends to outperform expectations. And that's where some of the strongest modern Lincoln cent sales come from. And this difference can completely change interest. There's also something emotional at play. For many collectors, modern coins represent a living timeline, coins they remember using as kids, or coins tied to specific moments in American history. The early 2000s mark a transitional era in U.S. coinage, a preeminent 2009 Lincoln designs, before the bicentennial reverses and shield cents changed the look of the series. That context quietly adds to collector appeal. Now let's talk about one more mistake owners make: assuming value today equals value forever. Markets change, demand shifts, new collectors enter the hobby, population reports evolve. Coins that sell modestly today sometimes outperform years later, especially if they remain scarce in top grades. That's why patient sellers sometimes discover unexpected income, not because they rushed to market, but because they waited for collector demand to mature. This is where many people get confused. Selling isn't about speed. It's about timing, condition, and audience. Now let's tie everything together. The 2002 D. Lincoln penny is not valuable because it's old. It's valuable because, in select examples, it's rare in ways most people overlook through condition rarity, verified mint errors, and collector competition. Most examples are worth 1 cent. Some are worth more. And a very small number have produced life-changing sale results for select examples. Not guaranteed, not common, but very real. And this difference can completely change interest. So if you have old penny jars, inherited coin collections, or rolls tucked away in drawers, the takeaway isn't that every coin is valuable. It's that some coins, even modern ones, deserve a closer look. And sometimes, quiet wealth discovery begins with curiosity instead of expectation. Before you move on, take a moment to check your own 2002 pennies, especially those with a D mint mark. Look carefully. Compare. Research. Because knowledge and patience matter far more than speed. And if you'd like to continue learning, there's another penny video waiting for you right now. One that reveals how another overlooked date surprised collectors in ways almost no one expected. Because when it comes to coins, the real value often isn't obvious at first glance. It reveals itself slowly, to the people who take the time to look.